Hey Patreon viewers, welcome to another video. Now you'll know what this one's about since it was chosen by the Patreon community in the poll, and that is building a home edit suite. And I'm going to talk about that by giving you a tour around mine. So we'll take a look around the room, how I've set stuff up, everything from the computer I have through to the monitors that I've used, the keyboard that I've chosen, what the room looks like, the setup, everything. So you'll get basically an MTV Cribs style rundown of my home edit suite. But before we get right into that, and I give you the opportunity to, make judgments about all of my stuff, I wanted to run through sort of the things to consider when buying your equipment and setting up your home Avid edit suite. So first off, you're going to need a computer, of course. Whether it's Mac or Windows, you're going to need a computer, and you're going to need one that's spec'd enough that it can run what you need it to run. So if that's Avid Media Composer primarily, then it's going to need a high CPU, clock count, preferably 6 or 8 cores at least, and plenty of RAM as well. If you're running stuff like Premiere or DaVinci as well, then you might also want a decent graphics card, high-end one, but Avid itself does not utilize hardware acceleration, so if you're just using Avid, that's not something you really need to consider. Another thing you'll want to look into is I/O. You're going to probably plug in a whole lot of drives and different things, and so you're going to want plenty of I/O options available to you. If you're running a NAS for network attached storage, then you might also want to consider having 10 gig E on the computer, 10 gig Ethernet, or 2.5 at least, so that you can communicate with that network storage fast and quickly for your renders and exports and things like that. Monitor space. If you've had a look at edit suites before, here's a couple of ones that I've used in the past at different facilities. You'll notice that they tend to have at least 2 or 3 monitors. Generally speaking, at least 2 for your Avid and a third one for a client output. Now, whether or not you need the client monitor for your Avid out is up to you. If you're never going to have clients in the room with you, and this is just for you to work, or if you're just remoting into a facility, you might not need that part. This is something to just consider based off of your needs. Next point would be networking. Networking both in the sense of having a fast home domestic network, particularly if you have a NAS to connect to that fast storage, and also your external networking, so your internet speed essentially. Spoiler alert, you're going to want fiber if you can. Now, another thing to consider as well is the peripherals. Now, this will be everything from your mouse, keyboard, wrist rest, the chair, all of this stuff. If you're going to be editing at home a lot, you're going to spend a lot of time there. So have it set up in a way that's comfortable to you, in a way that's accessible. You can reach all the tools that you need quickly. You have everything at your disposal. So you'll see mine and the choices that I've made. But think of it like you're at your station on the bridge of the Enterprise, and you want all your controls just right there and available to you and customized to how you work. That's how I like to think of it. This is the captain's chair. Of course, is the software. So this will be your Avid license, your Resolve, your Adobe license if that's one you use, Media Encoder, all the rest of it. All the little utilities and NLEs and software that you use, you're going to want to consider when you're putting together the suite, because you're going to want to make sure you've got a machine that can run all that and run it well. So if you look online in forums and articles and stuff, you'll generally find people who have assembled suites specifically to run this stuff, and you can look at their experiences and their own recommendations. As I've said earlier, I will say this for Avid, you want to focus mostly on CPU and RAM because it doesn't use hardware acceleration. Unless you're using plugins like Boris and stuff like that, those plugins might use it. But if you're using Premiere or Resolve or stuff like that, then you're going to want to look into more intense graphics cards and better cooling as well. And another thing to consider is storage. Now, there's a few things to think about there. You're going to want something that's reliable, that's not just going to fail on you. You're going to want something with decent read-write speeds, for rendering, exporting, things like that. And depending on what you're working with, you might need higher or smaller capacity. So even for smaller projects, you're going to need at least a few terabytes. Whereas for larger projects, especially if you're doing more than one at once, you might be into the 10, 15, 20 terabytes range. So storage definitely comes into play when you're building the suite. But it's not just about speed and capacity. You're also going to want storage for your backups and archiving. So I've got a number of drives in my drawers for those, and I've also got a time machine backup that's constantly going over the Mac as well. So all backed up the whiz here. And last but certainly not least is your budget. This is going to inform most of your decisions of all of the previous points, but I've put it to the last because you want to consider everything that you would ideally like to do, and then look at your budget, see how much you can afford at the present time, and see how much of that you can fit into that number. And then once you do that, you'll know where to go from there, and what you can put together and how soon you'll be able to put it together as well. But that's enough preamble. Let's get into nosing around my stuff.
Right, so here we'll start with a little tour of the office. So on the left here is just sort of a little display for when clients come by. I'm not showing you much of that corner because that's a bit of a mess at the moment. But we've got some nice editing and film magazines. First Frame is actually associated with British Film Editors, which is our equivalent of ACE. I've got an article coming out in the next one that I wrote about moving from assistant to editing. So stay tuned for that if you're in the UK. Bunch of books on editing in there. They were actually in a recent Instagram post, as well as a whole number of other books and tools for fixing computers and random stuff. Some business cards, printer, usual stuff. It's just a nice layout for when clients come over. Occasionally I get directors and stuff come in for a home edit. That's borrowed. I don't actually play. I know having it there in the background makes it look like I play, but I don't. I always have the blind closed because I don't like natural light. I just get crazy amount of glare. I've got whiteboard here, pictures of my family, kids and stuff. I always like to have a whiteboard. It's just sort of easier and quicker to notate stuff that I need to do and get to. I even take this off the wall and bring it into facilities sometimes when I'm on a job. Got lamp there and another one there above the desk. I just sort of like the white light of an LED when I'm working, and it sort of bounces off the white walls quite nicely. Storage for work stuff here. So bottom drawers for hard drives and storage. Digital storage. There's about 4 hard drives in there. There's another 2 here. This one's an 8 terabyte. That one's mine. This one's a facilities. I need to send that back. It's actually a 6 terabyte one. And then documents, USB cables, AV cables, adapters. Just sort of tidying stuff away. I'm meaning to actually get another one of these for there because, as you can see, it's a bit of a mess, and that needs to get tidied up. And cable management at the moment leaves something to be desired, but I'm in the middle of redoing it, so I'll come back to that. And there's my RAID drive. I actually used to have that up here on the desk in the corner there, but it was really, really loud, and having it too close to the mic, and when I was doing the videos it would just overpower it, and it was causing issues with a lot of audio stuff, so I've put it down there for now. And just sort of something below it so that it's not straight onto the carpet. But that one is a 20 terabyte with 6 drives, so it's got 1 drive redundancy, and Thunderbolt 3, so it's fairly speedy, good for performance. We'll come back to that anyway, we'll circle back around. And there's a Thunderbolt mini monitor there as well. I've got a backup keyboard over there. That's an Avid keyboard. With the sort of keys printed on it. It's not bad, but editor's keys aren't my preference. I don't particularly like the way the keys feel. So my editing t-shirts that I use in the videos, I sort of just keep them handy here so I can throw it on at the end of the day when I'm recording a video. Got my client monitor here. This will just display my Avid output, and brings us to the desk. Now, I'm recording this in the middle of the workday at the moment, so this isn't particularly strategized as to what I've left sitting out on the desk. Like my PlayStation controller wouldn't normally be there. Put that over there just now. But you've got the usual keyboard, mouse, mic. Got my headphones. When I'm working at home, I kind of just always wearing my headphones, and I like to have them wired in. Even though those are Bluetooth, they can be. If I'm traveling or if I'm elsewhere, I'll use the Bluetooth part. But I don't like to have it on all the time because it just drains the battery. But moving on. Keyboard, Stream Deck, which we've talked about. Thunderbolt 3 dock over here. I use a MacBook, and I'll get into my choice of Mac over PC a bit later and why I'm using a laptop as well instead of a desktop. But because I'm using a MacBook, and all these ones had for I/O was Thunderbolt, that necessitated this dock, which gives me an Ethernet port, 2 Thunderbolt 3s, headphone jack in and out, 5 USB Type A ports, 1 Type C, SD card reader, micro SD card reader, along with a number of other ports in the back, like DisplayPort and stuff like that. So it's a really great dock. If you're a Mac user and you're ever looking for peripherals or even parts for inside for fixing stuff, can not recommend OWC enough. Their website is actually macsales.com. I think that was maybe the company's old name or something, but great company. Do a lot of really useful stuff. What my MacBook is sitting on at the moment is actually just a cooler. So this has got 4 fans inside it, and I've got this little dial here so I can turn the fans on and off. Don't know if you can hear that going on and off there. Apple is notorious for having really, really shitty thermals, so hence the laptop cooler. And then all that's really left is my monitors. So I've got the laptop screen, which is probably the best monitor out of all of them. I've got a Dell ultra wide, so this allows me to have a really long timeline. Whenever I'm recording the videos for the channel and stuff like that, I move everything over to here so that it records it 16 by 10, which is close enough for getting it into a video format. But I've normally got my Avid layout spread across all of this, and a really long timeline all across here. Just makes it much nicer for scrubbing and stuff like that. And of course I've got my client monitor over there, so this will just always be displaying my Avid out, full picture. So if you've got clients over or anything like that, it's much nicer for them to see. But yeah, that's kind of the overall gist. Like some phone chargers and stuff like that always plugged in. I do have one power brick attached here with 4 plugs, but I've also got an 8-way one down there that's surge protected and it's got a few USB ports on it and stuff like that. So most stuff is in there and have labels on the plugs of what they are. But I like to keep this one here, which is just sort of a go-to if you want to plug anything else in, which is now also getting busy. But yeah, I think that works as a rough introduction, so let's get into having a look around at the various bits and pieces. Right, so here's an up-close look at the RAID. Storage is very important, and this is the baby that I've went with. It is, again, from OWC, same one as my Thunderbolt dock. It is their Thunder Bay 6, and this is basically, the Thunder Bay 6 just means there's 6 drives inside. So I'll show you here. There we go. So we've got bays A through to F, and these are configured at the moment in a RAID 5 or RAID 6 array. I can't quite remember which one, but it's got 1 drive redundancy. So if one of them fails, it'll let me know, and then I just slide one of these out, pop a new drive in, and it'll redistribute all the data, and then I haven't lost anything. But it is very fast using the Thunderbolt 3 protocol, and it allows me as well to also get some more I/O, because it's got another Thunderbolt port on the back for daisy chaining. So I use the other one to enable my Ultra Studio mini monitor. That's upside down right now, but I can flip this in post, as you can see, I'm sure. And this is what allows my Avid output to go to my client monitor. And because it's made by Blackmagic, this works whether you're in Final Cut, Avid, Resolve, Premiere, whatever. It's a great little box. It's not that expensive, and I've been using it for years. I had another one before this back in New Zealand, and they're great, really good. Just booted this back up, and you should be able to see some. Turn it back around. You can see all my lights coming back on. So there we go. That's my storage choice, and that allows me plenty fast storage. It's not network attached, so I can't remote into it necessarily, unless I enable remoting in from the computer, which I could do and have done in the past. But generally this is for performance working, so this is for home editing. Now, when I was getting my client monitor that the Ultra Studio was sending my Avid output to, I didn't have to get one that was that fancy. I actually went for a really, really low budget LG TV. And the reason why you go TV as opposed to monitor is because you want it to be able to support frame rates like 24 and 25. And a lot of computer monitors don't necessarily receive those signals, not properly anyway. You know, they're more looking for 60 Hertz and, you know, higher refresh rates, because monitors are built for working or gaming or stuff like that. So if you want to display, you know, the more broadcast formats, get a TV. And this one did the business quite fine. Didn't have to be too big, and I don't care that much about colour accuracy because I'm offline anyway, and I never do any grading. That's not really my wheelhouse, but I know plenty of people who are very good at it, and I can get them to help me out if need be. Right, now these are the specs of my machine. Not the best, but not the worst. When I was choosing what to go with, I knew I wanted to be Mac because I just prefer it over Windows. It's what I've always used. I think the operating system is just better. The hardware isn't necessarily better, but the operating system I just think is much more efficient. I like the way I can just hit spacebar on any media file and play it. It's really great for picking out sound effects. And I've got a number of Apple devices, so the ecosystem, the way it all syncs, is just really, really good. The hardware does leave a lot to be desired though. But because I was going Mac, and I wanted a MacBook because I like portability so I can take it places, I knew these aren't particularly upgradable, so I kitted it out as best I could at the time. So I've got a 6-core Intel i9, 32 gig of RAM, and a Radeon Pro graphics card. Now the graphics card isn't the best, but Avid doesn't really use it. This is one thing to bear in mind if you're building up an Avid suite, is Avid doesn't particularly care what graphics card you had. It's heavily reliant on the CPU and the RAM. But it doesn't look at your graphics card. It just doesn't care. Avid doesn't really use any hardware acceleration or anything like that. With that being said, if you're using any outside plugins, you know, stuff like Boris or New Blue, some of them will utilize hardware acceleration, and then, you know, if you've got a powerful graphics card, it'll utilize that there. Right, now as some of you may know, I've got a number of peripherals, so I'm just going to quickly rattle through these and talk about the logic behind the decisions of what I purchased. So first off, Logitech MX Master. At the time they didn't have mechanical keyboards from Mac yet. They do now, and I would like one, but this keyboard's doing me perfectly fine. But the reason why I got this was actually for remote working during lockdown, and I was remoting into different machines, some in London or LA, and you know, the international variance between British and American keyboards, some keys are slightly different, and going between Mac and PC as well. And what I love about this keyboard is it's got all the markings for all the different variations of keyboard, so no matter what you're remoting into, you can see it here somewhere, and it helps for getting the muscle memory right. Plus it's stronger metal, so it's not like one of those cheap plastic keyboards, and it's got better spacing and distance from the Apple ones, and a bit better feel of the keys. They're not quite as flat as the Apple keyboards. So, good one. And I can't stand keyboards that are just this size. I need to have a numpad when I'm editing. So, hence this one. If you're on Mac, it doesn't really leave you with too many options. And I just got the mouse that pairs with it. I used to have an MX Vertical, so you hold the mouse like this, which is better for you, and it did help with sort of wrist pain and stuff, but it broke, and I did get another one because I've got no idea why it broke. So I've got the MX Master 3 here, and what I really like about it is there's a few programmable buttons and stuff, but I really like the horizontal scroll wheel. This is really great for getting around the timeline and stuff, for just shifting along a little bit, because you got a horizontal one and you got a vertical wheel one for scrolling up, down, and side to side. So that's quite nice. Plus they're both wireless, so it makes it easier for taking them around. Got my Elgato mic right here, so this is what I'm normally recording my audio on most of the videos, like the YouTube videos and stuff like this. It's really, really good, particularly the software on it, and we've got this little dial. So I've got my headphones plugged into it for monitoring, but also for general audio when I'm using the Mac, and I can control my volume there, and I can control, you know, the gain of the microphone here as well. So that's quite handy. But I can also do it through the Stream Deck if I want. And we've already talked about the Stream Deck here on the channel. I've done a whole video on how I use it and what I mainly use it for, so I'll not get into that too much. Suffice to say, I really like my Stream Deck, and whenever I'm going anywhere for a facility or anything like that, this will be one of the ones that come with me. So this, keyboard, mouse, and that'll get packed up, that'll come. Over here we've got our Thunderbolt dock, which was necessitated by the MacBook. So we've got micro SD card there, SD card reader, headphone jack, as well as mic input. I've got 5 USB Type A ports, and 2 of them are high powered for charging. A Type C port. Let's see what we've got around the back. We've got 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports. There we've got a display port, Ethernet, which is where I'm jacked in, and we've got optical audio there if I wanted it, and there's my other USB Type A ports, and that is my peripherals. Now we'll show you, just for the sake of thoroughness here, my other keyboard that I can use if I so desire. I've got an editor keys, Avid one. Now I don't use it too much because the keys are a bit mushy. It's not the best keyboard to type on, it's kind of plasticky kind of feel, but I got it when I was first setting all this up and I was getting some people in, and it just sort of looked nice on the desk, you know. So yeah, it's fine, but I don't tend to use these Avid keyboards too much, because my Avid keyboard on the software is completely remapped at this point, so the markings aren't really much help. Now networking is a big concern when you're setting up a suite, so there's 2 points to consider here. The first one I didn't really deal with, and that's internal networking, so your home network. And that would be particularly important if you're setting up a NAS, and these can be really great because you can remote into them from elsewhere. But I didn't go with a NAS because direct attached storage, like my Thunderbolt RAID, are a good bit faster, and I didn't have 10 gig E available to me, so I just kept with my stock ISPs router, good old BT right there. But talking about BT, that brings us to the second point in networking, which is your internet speed. And ideally, if you're editing and you're delivering files, particularly if you're remoting into an edit suite, you're going to want fiber. So when we were getting our house, when we were buying our house, it was actually a big concern. It was a deal breaker in terms of a house, as whether there was fiber available in that area. And you know, obviously it is in this one because this is the one we got. So I'm on a 500 megabit fiber connection, and I had even wired the house with Ethernet running along and around here to plug into the Thunderbolt dock there. Now you might be asking, why are you running all that Ethernet if your router's right there? And you know, that would be a logical question, but the answer is that the router used to be through in the living room, and with the first initial ISP we had, we moved in, and then when we were switching, I got the new guys to wire into the house from the back garden. So there's the fibre connection coming in there. But the Ethernet cable is still here because it's now plugged into the PS5 at the other end and runs through here into the router in this room. So it's not going to waste. Another thing that's really important is having enough monitor real estate, or monitor space. So here I'll give you a quick glimpse of something you don't normally see in the YouTube videos, which is my normal Avid layout. So my MacBook here, which I normally squeeze everything onto for recording the videos because it's just a better aspect ratio, is generally just my bins. So let me hold this like this. I will open all my bins up in tabs across here, and as many as I need. I generally only need about 3 or 4 open Macs at a time, and I'll have my sidebar open here. So this whole left monitor is just bins. And even before we had the new UI of Avid, back in the 2018 and before days, I still used this method. Left monitor, just bins. Which brings me to the right monitor, which is everything else. Now I've went for a Dell ultra wide, so this is 34 inch, 21 by 9 I believe. Pretty wide monitor. And one of the best parts about that is that it gives me a very long timeline. And so I've got a big wide lateral view of the timeline that I can scrub along. I've got zoom in and out mapped to my mouse, so I can zoom in there. Can use that horizontal scroll wheel. And yeah, this monitor just works really great for displaying everything I need in Avid. I've got my timecode window up here. I'll keep my effect palette up here, as well as a little audio mixer, just in case I need it. But I do have other workspaces, like here's my audio one ready to go, with a full audio mixer there and the timeline. So I've got other workspaces, for specific tasks when I need to do them. Like, of course, as I've mentioned, my Avid Assistant one, which throws everything over on this monitor. So I'll show you that. Dump. This is very frustrating to work with, but I'll make do fine for recording the videos, and then I can have notes and information up here on the other monitor. But I digress. And of course, if you enable hardware, which we have just here, then that will enable sending the signal of my Avid out to my client monitor. So if I have people in the room with me, then they can see the Avid output as I scrub along the timeline, like so. And it's just really handy to have, even if I'm working by myself. You can glance over to there, and if the slate's really small, or they've put it a bit too far and you're trying to sync or something, this is quite handy. The one thing to note though, if you're using Ultra Studio Mini monitor or a breakout box like this, Avid make them, Blackmagic make them, Asia make one called a T-Tap as well, it's quite good. If you're using anything like this, then it's going to send the audio and the video signal out this way, right? You can't split it, so you can't have it going to your computer speakers or your headphones necessarily, and the picture go there. If you want to send the audio elsewhere, like not coming through those TV speakers, you have to run the audio out the back of the TV. Now there's a couple of logical reasons for this. It's partly to keep sync lock between the picture and sound, which is being managed by that breakout box right there. And it's just something to be aware of. A lot of people kind of seem to get tripped up by this and then, struggle to figure out how to get their sound where they want it to go, whether it be headphones or whatever else. But that's how you do it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what my Avid would look like generally while I'm working. Notebook open, because I like pen and paper. Stream Deck ready with the Avid layout. And bins, Avid, windows and layout and timeline, and output. Oh, and another thing to note is that this Dell monitor actually doubles as a USB hub as well. There's a bunch of USB ports on the back under it. So as long as that's connected to your computer, so plugged into my dock there, I can plug stuff into there to connect to the computer, or just plug stuff straight into it to charge via USB. So I think there's 4 in the back there, and if you're keeping track, that brings the total number of USB Type A ports up to 9 now at this point. So we're looking pretty good for I/O.
Right, so back to our normal dynamic. We're on the screen records. Excellent. So last little thing I'm going to mention is software, or bread and butter that we need here. Now you can see in the background here we've got a Wavelink. So this is the software that pairs with my microphone. So on this I'm able to create a mix similar to OBS, just with a much nicer interface. So I can set a mix of different applications and the audio coming from them, and have that record during my videos. So very great little app and one I use all the time. And I pair that with an app called Screencast, which I'm using at the moment to make the videos that I do for YouTube. Now, Screencast allows me to record a video at the same time within the app, and I get a little, using my webcam, and I get a little video box like this that I can move around. So I've actually kind of stopped doing that. You'll see it in the earlier videos that I did, moving from 2018 to the new UI and stuff like that. You'll see it there. But I've since stopped using this feature in the last good while, because when I would be editing, if I zoomed into something to show it in the software, you would lose this little area as well. And I like to talk with my hands and my face and communicate stuff to you. Having it just be this little a little corner that gets burned into the image was getting a bit inconvenient. So I now record everything to camera using my phone, but I'll use it here since we're just going to be showing stuff on the desktop. But I can't fault it as well, because Screencast has been a very great app. It only cost me a few pounds, and I can pause recordings if I want. I can up the quality and resolution. It's just really, really good. And I couldn't really be bothered with OBS. There was too many options. It was a little too customizable. And without somebody teaching it to me or showing me, it was going to get a bit confusing. But in terms of software that I use for editing and work and stuff like that, I've got quite a few. So let me move this guy and show you my applications folder here. So up here, 4K Video Downloader is what I personally use to rip videos off of YouTube, which I have to do occasionally for work reasons. We rip music from YouTube all the time in offline, because nobody outside of the edit's ever going to hear it. It's going to either be replaced with royalty-free music later on, or some licensed music from a library, or an original composition, which is probably going to be most common in larger productions. The Affinity suite, which is quite necessary for me because I don't use anything Adobe. I try to avoid subscriptions if I can help it, and with these I can get a lifetime license, and they can do more or less everything that Adobe InDesign and Photoshop can do. What else we got? Obviously we've got Avid right here. Won't really be the Avid assistants, but an Avid license. I've changed it to the Ultimate subscription for this year, just so that I can maybe do some videos on Ultimate only features like script sync and phrase find. So when I get time, I'll look into doing that. What else we got? I've got Blackmagic Disk Speed Test, great for testing the speed of drives. What else do we use? Carbon Copy Cloner is an excellent one for doing backups, because it'll do a verified backup. It'll check the data at the source side and the destination as it's copying, and you can set it to run on a schedule. You can back up your source drive and even make a bootable disk, so you'll be able to boot your machine from like an external USB drive if you want, which is really, really, really handy to be able to do. So I use that for my machine backups. Clean My Mac, you may have seen advertised on YouTube at some point. I've got videos everywhere. And it's just kind of handy. I've got it up here. It gives me a readout of sort of information of the Mac, and sort of scans your machine and helps you find stuff to delete a bit quicker than you would otherwise. Compressor is Apple's variation of Adobe Media Encoder. It's just an encoder, but you can encode to most formats, just about anything. You can't make something into DNX, but it can read DNX. But you know, we can make all kinds of different formats here, from uncompressed through to proxies, ProReses, image sequences, all kinds of masters or delivery formats, whatever we want, and we've got like a whole suite of different configurations and things we can do with it when we're doing the encode. And we get like a nice little preview of what it'll look like before we start, if we're going to add filters or timecode generators or something like that as we're doing the encode. So it's a great little app, and it really doesn't cost that much, and again, it's a lifetime license, so that's always something that I prefer. DaVinci Resolve, absolutely essential, love it. I mostly use it for transcoding, but it's a really great encoder, and it's also just the most format friendly NLE, so it can read just about any file format, it can export to just about any file format. It's really great to have, and you can do just about anything on the free version as well. Digital Rebellion here, just got a few sort of digital tools like Cineplay. Is really good. It's basically like a media player like QuickTime, but you can add markers on the timeline as you're doing it, and you can import those markers into your NLE like Avid or something later. So it's really great for doing a review with clients or something. Like if you're on a call, I'll maybe share my screen and scrub through the timeline using an export of it in Cineplay, and then add markers there, and then spit the markers out and bring them into Avid after the call. What else we got? Got Final Cut Pro, use that for any sort of short form work. Frame.io app, great for uploading. I'll kind of just go through these a bit faster. Logitech Options, which is the software for my mouse and keyboard for, controlling hotkeys and remapping and stuff like that. And for giving me my displays of battery remaining, stuff like that. Max Fan Control, so I've got complete control over my fans. I can ramp them up more if I need to. Keyboard Maestro, where we do all my macros. I've done a whole video on that on the channel. Blu-ray player, just because for some reason by default Macs won't play a Blu-ray like in QuickTime or anything like that, but this is a perfectly good Blu-ray player, and I do have an external Blu-ray drive if I need it. That's in one of those drawers that you saw earlier. I've got a media info app, which is great because you can drag just about any media file onto it, and it will give you a full description of it, break down an audio layout, channels, everything. And it's either really, really cheap or it's free. Can't quite remember, but it is really good. Motion, Apple's version of After Effects. Not quite as powerful, but it can do most stuff. Anything I've ever needed, it can do. Name Mangler, just like a batch renamer. A really good one, good UI. Batch renaming files, adding prefix, suffixes, date formats, removing characters, stuff like that. What else sort of work stuff we got? NTFS for Mac is quite an essential one for me, so I can read Windows NTFS formatted drives on the Mac. I can read and write to them if I need to. It's good to have that option. PIA, it's my VPN of choice. It's just between this and ExpressVPN, I found them to be the two faster ones, and I just always recommend having a VPN if you're going to go around on the net and do anything really. It's sort of like a bare minimum of internet security. PS Remote Play, this isn't really a work related thing, but it just enables me so that when I've got a very long render going out and I'm stuck in the house, or if there's other stuff going on, I can remote into the PlayStation and play a game or something while I'm waiting for Avid to export. Don't get to do it often, but when I do, it's nice. QuickTime Player, standard, comes with Mac, perfectly good player. SoftRaid is the software that manages my RAID. It is a software-based RAID as opposed to a hardware one. So if I open that up, if my RAID's connected, which I have it disconnected just now, for the, as I've said, for audio reasons, but you'll see it here, and it has a breakdown of all the different connected drives, and this is where you would redistribute the data if you had a failure, and this is the software that would tell you if you had a failed drive or anything like that. It's quite good, and it works really well. Got Slack, sort of essential to some jobs like you'd be using it. One of the jobs I'm on at the moment requires me to use it, so you'll see it it's active down below. So if they need me to do anything, grab an export or fix something, or they've got a complaint about something, they'll tell me on Slack. Time Machine as a backup there. VLC players, pretty essential. You need that for playing, obviously. Zoom, Wavelink we've showed, we've discussed. Transmit is my favorite one for connecting to remote servers. So for SFTPs and stuff like that, it's just a really, really nice app for that. I've got another one at the moment of these called Jetstream. But Jetstream is sort of a specific one to connect to specific setup servers. So that's only installed for a specific job so I can connect to a post facility in London and send them files. So I don't use it too much. I've only really used it on this job. Just like this PC OIP client over here, I've only really used on this job, which is for connecting to Teradici, remote software solution. So I'm remoting into an Avid using that at the moment. So it is active, as you can see down here. Right, everybody, thank you very much for watching. I do hope that that was interesting for you. You know, you've had a right good nosy now at my room and my stuff. Feel free to, put any comments and ask any questions about, why I chose to get something over something else and why I've set stuff up like this. There are a couple of things that I regret, because I did assemble my edit room in a hurry. Because we bought the house and I had to furnish it very quickly because I was already working when I moved into it. So some things that I'm talking about there would be like the desk, for example. I quite like bits and pieces of this desk. Like it's got a cup holder on one side and the the headphone stand and stuff that's built into it. That's nice. But I would want one significantly wider to handle the monitors and everything else comfortably. Wider and deeper if I could. So that's one thing I'll mention if you're assembling your own edits setup is get a big desk. I'd maybe get a better chair. Got this one on an Amazon Black Friday deal, but it's not the best. I think I would go with Secret Labs or something for next time in the future. Might upgrade to that at some point. But yeah, if there's any questions of anything else on here that you want to ask or you want me to show in more detail, I can always take photos and do another post to explain stuff. So feel free to ask any questions you like. I am at your disposal, as I have demonstrated by showing you around my space. But until next time, guys, this is the end of this video. Thank you very, very much for watching. Hope you got out of it what you needed. And I'll see you soon, either here or over on YouTube. Bye, guys.